Hello, for anyone who's randomly watching. I think it's the first time I don't have work swag on in one of these videos. Um, Feeling better and frankly a little bored today as I try to go back to work and thought I'd make a video. I really wanted to make more videos, but turns out when you're sick and dealing with a lot of stuff, you don't always want to. Also, the lighting could not be worse, like accentuating this like line, but whatever. Um, And I'm starting to get prednisone face a little bit, which sucks. But if anything, just want to put out into the ethos and the interwebs about my really rare reaction to IMURAN because it was insane. And I want people in my situation who are maybe searching for stuff to find what I found. So I had been on Cellcept before as a complement to the prednisone I am still taking. So it's still on 10 milligrams of prednisone a day, which thank God it's a low dose. And then the Cellcept was 750 twice a day. And then I actually also had rare reactions to Cellcept, which predominantly made me super nauseous to the point where I couldn't walk down the street with my dogs without getting motion sick. Sometimes it felt like I was drunk, like just laying on the couch. It felt like the room was spinning. The sight and smell of food was awful. So just like all this crazy stuff. So my nephrologist was like, okay, let's try a different immunosuppressant, IMURAN, which is older. And that's kind of the thing with these drugs that is, I don't know, the unfortunate part. Like, it's pharmaceuticals, in order to keep making money once the generics come out, they kind of put out a newer and then probably in some cases better drugs, but you get the newer stuff first, and there's often alternatives, and thank God there are. So we decided to try me on IMURAN, and I sure as hell can't pronounce the other name for it. If you Google it, I'll put it in the description. Um, and in the couple days between taking the cells, I kind of like gave myself 2 days before I started the IMURAN, and my nephrologist was like, I know you're really sensitive. Why don't you ramp up on the IMURAN? I was like, okay. And so I started 50 milligrams a day and then 100 milligrams. And the most noticeable complaint typically was upset stomach, even though that was the issue from before. But I took it and my stomach was fine and I was feeling really good. And I was like, okay, I'm going to finally go back to work and it's going to be great. And all of a sudden, after about 4 or 5 days of taking it, I started feeling really drowsy, and I noticed that it was getting harder to get out of bed again in the morning. And that was kind of bothering me, and I just am so unfortunately really in tune and sensitive with my body that I was like, okay, something's wrong again. This isn't good. And it was like on a Wednesday, I had a headache and like it was just achy all over. And I kind of was like, oh, maybe it's my time of the month. I don't know. Whatever. I just downplayed it. And the next morning, I woke up with a fever and the achiness, but no respiratory symptoms. And so I immediately was like, great. This is how I got hospitalized the last 2 times. Was I got a fever out of nowhere, and so it's maybe graphic if you're like a friend watching, but like my urine the other 2 times was really dark, which is an indicator of your kidneys being out of whack. And this time my urine looked okay, but I just was convinced. I'm like, going back in the hospital, clearly, like, I've been through this twice this year. I packed a hospital bag. I skipped urgent care because I couldn't get in with my regular doctor that day. And I was like, I don't see a need in going to my regular doctor or urgent care because they're just going to send me to the ER and admit me. So I went on a Thursday and got in, did the test, and my kidneys, a certain point too, is that my kidneys had been actually a little bit worse the last week. I crossed back over creatinine of 4.1, which is the borderline between like chronic kidney disease stages like 4 and 5, so the difference between failure and not failure. And I use failure as a term of like when you're at that worst of a level, um, your kidneys are just on their way to failing and could start showing the signs. So I again was just super convinced. Took a bunch of blood, did a bunch of tests, hanging out. My nephrologist happened to be on rounds that day, so I actually saw him in the ER, and they were just like, actually, your blood work looks good. Your kidneys even look a little bit better. Your urine doesn't look like it did the last 2 times you got hospitalized. You probably just have a virus. Just go home. And I was like, okay, like this is a weird virus. I've been sick a lot in my life, and this is strange. So okay. So I went home and started developing a fever again. I'd taken Tylenol, so they're like, okay, Tylenol clearly is breaking your fevers. Um, and so go ahead and um, go home. So I did, and I started developing a fever as I left. And by the time I went to bed, it was around 101. And I run subnormal, usually run like a 97 or so, 97.6 versus a 98.6. And I took Tylenol, woke up a couple hours later, and my fever was higher. It was at 100. Um, so it was like 100 when I went to bed. Took Tylenol, it was 101. And I woke up. I took more Tylenol, went to bed. Woke up again a couple hours later, and it was 102. And 102 is pretty high. 103, you need to go to the ER. Um, and I took more Tylenol, and this is risky business, right? You're not supposed to take too much Tylenol, especially in a short period of time. It can be bad for your liver. I don't have an alternative. I can't take Advil because of my kidneys, and so I've never had a fever not break when I've used Tylenol. So I was a little wigged out, and I could not get that fever to break for 12 hours, and that was really strange. And I called the next day to speak with, urgent care at that point, and they were just like, well, use cold compresses. And that was honestly the only thing that kept my fevers down, was putting a cold compress on the back of my neck, a little bit my head, but really having it on my neck was the only thing that kind of, it like resets something about just how your body controls temperature, and it like kind of tricks your body. So but this was all concerning, and going into the weekend, it always sucks because you're like, your doctors are out of reach. So I started feeling really weak, and I kept having headaches, and I was starting to have vision problems. So I got through the whole weekend. My fever ended up getting as high as 102.5. And what was really weird is normally with a virus, you go to bed with a fever, and your fever gets really high at night, and by the morning it's usually broken. And what I found kind of subsequent nights is I may or may not go to bed with a slightly elevated fever, but I was waking up with fevers. And that was a signal to me that this wasn't right. However, I was continuing to have really bad headaches. And so Sunday, I was feeling a little tiny bit better, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do a simple yoga routine to, like, I think I have a lot of neck strain and shoulders, because at one point I was like, maybe I have meningitis because of all the headaches and fever. So I did this really simple yoga routine. It was 10 minutes, watched it on YouTube. It was it. I've been an athlete at some points in my life. And I did a couple moves where, like, I sat back in child's pose on my knees on the floor and was like, kind of like, wow, like, I've been really sedentary as I've been sick, and this hurts my knees a little bit. And I did some movement where you're like on all fours and you stretch up, and it really stretches across your chest muscles. So didn't think anything of it, just, helped a little bit with the stress. But again, I was just trying to, like, just ease the whole area, since I can't take Advil. And I woke up Monday morning in excruciating pain in my chest. I thought I was having a heart attack. It took a little bit for me to realize that it was even across my chest and it was under my sternum. The pain was 10 out of 10. I seriously contemplated going to the ER, but there was an issue with rides and stuff like that, so I couldn't lay down anymore. I had to be propped up on the couch and sleep upright the rest of the night. And every breath hurt, and it felt like someone was pounding down on my sternum while simultaneously ripping the muscles away from it. So it really hurts. And so I spent most of the day just not moving. I spoke with the doctors again Monday, and they were not concerned with my chest, even though that's what hurt the most. And the pain finally kind of went down, but God, my skin is so sensitive. See, I could scratch a little bit, and you can see the blood there. That's probably actually, this is from the prednisone, folks. Your skin gets really sensitive. So annoying. And like my hangnails, like I'm just always bleeding. Um, so I called and they were like, we're really worried about the fact that you're still complaining about headaches. Like, I don't think you have meningitis. You have bacterial meningitis. You've been done for, which I agreed. But they're like, you should just get checked for viral meningitis because you're on 2 immunosuppressants, and a normal healthy person probably could reject those germs. But because you're on 2 different drugs that weaken your immune system further, just come in, go straight to the ER, because I was going to go to urgent care about the chest pain. So I did, and again, they didn't really find anything, and the ER was kind of a mess that night. They were so busy that they were rejecting normal ambulances. They were only taking trauma cases from like people who called up, and so I was just like, I could walk and talk. I was coherent, and I wasn't screaming in pain, and so they just kind of came to the same conclusion. They're like, you don't have meningitis. It's probably still a virus. We can give you a bag of fluids. At that point, I was on a clock at night. I'm like, I will go home and drink a damn liter of bottle. Like, I don't need to sit here for another 2 hours and get fluids by IV. And the nurse totally botched to my, this is like, can't totally see, but like, I never bruise from getting IVs or blood drawn. She did this really weird thing where when she yanked the IV out, because whenever you go to the ER, they just automatically give you an IV. She yanked it out. She folded my arm over, and it just, there's all sorts of blood. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, hello? So a week later, still a bruise. Actually, God, oh, like 10 days later. Shit. So anyhow, so I went back home, and when I was leaving, I was like, my knees really hurt. It like really hurts to walk. Like, I don't know if I can walk. And so progressively, I kept having these fevers. I woke up again Tuesday morning in incredible chest pain. And I was getting in weaker and weaker that I had to walk with a cane. And it was just my knees and my chest hurting. So at this point, I'm like, I'm waking up to weird fevers. I have no other symptoms. And the parts that hurt the most clearly were tipped off by me doing that simple yoga routine. That's not normal. Like, this is not a normal disease or virus. And so I was like, I think it's the IMURAN. So I chose not to take it one night. And that was the first night. And at that point, 6 days that I didn't have a fever. I felt stronger. I didn't have to walk with a cane because it was like the soft tissue under my kneecaps really hurting. So every step, like I just was constantly using my arms to get around if I could. And so I went into my primary doctor on Wednesday, and she's amazing and great and listens to me and understands how sensitive I am to medicine. And I was like, I've been to the ER twice. Nothing is getting better. I don't seem to really respond to Tylenol, and I'm waking up to fevers. I'm like, call me crazy, but I think this is another side effect and issue from one of the immunosuppressants I'm taking. And so we kind of did a research session with her access to medical journals and records. And sure enough, we found out that it's a really rare side effect, um, that it can cause extreme muscle weakness and fever, amongst other things. And there's a case study literally described another guy who had like gone to the ER, gotten passed off as a virus, and then they finally realized it was the IMURAN. In both other cases, like the people had to crawl because their muscle weakness was so bad, whereas mine, the muscle weakness just kind of happened where it aggravated or stretched muscles. Um, but still, it was insane. It was insane that just taking this medicine made me again so debilitated that I couldn't walk barely. I had to spend several nights waking up in pain, sleeping upwards. Oh, and so basically to test the theory, since I had not taken it the night before, didn't have the fever, the plan was to take it one more time, see what happened, and sure enough, and I cataloged it, or like, marked it all down for my doctor, how within 2 hours of taking it, my vision started getting funky. Within 4 hours of taking it, I was back to needing to use a cane to walk again. Middle of the night, woke up with fevers again. So it just was very clearly the IMURAN. And then once I stopped taking the IMURAN, no fever since then. My muscles took a couple days to balance out. I'm unfortunately still having some vision problems, which sucks. It's like when you get up really fast, and like you get that lightheaded feeling. I unfortunately can like turn my head and get that. And it's like blotchy and just weird vision blurriness issues, which I think is because my muscles were weak with my eyes and they're just taking longer. I don't really know. But it was insane. And so this is really long. I don't expect most people to watch or listen to all of this unless you're a really good friend or you've gone through the stuff with IMURAN, and are searching, because the little bit that I searched one night, which had also tipped me off to thinking about this, was I did search, I think the first morning I woke up with severe chest pain and was like, holy crap, and I did a Google search for IMURAN and muscle pain. Turns out you should use the other name and you get better results. But and like one person on one message board like threw it out there as a possibility, and people were gonna like, maybe. So anyhow, yeah, so that happened. And yeah, so this is pretty long as it is. Maybe hopefully I'll make another video tomorrow or something, just talking about other emotions of what it was like going through being like, oh my God, I'm sick on top of being sick. Am I ever going to get better? Like, will I ever be a real normal person again? I don't know. So, but if anything, I just really hope this video helps someone else feel like they're not alone, they're not the only person who's sensitive to medicines, and they're not crazy that, they're on another drug that's supposed to help them that unfortunately maybe is not, or it's just causing more harm than good. And so where my story, at least with IMURAN, kind of ends is my doctor, and I was going to suggest this to him, but he agreed, since all of the medicine I'm taking is a shot in the dark just to see if my kidneys will respond, and I'm now 2 for 2, that literally have left me debilitated. I am not trying a third medicine. However, these are the medicines, should I get a kidney transplant, that I would need to take as anti-rejection medicine. And so my doctor's on sabbatical this month, the month of August. We're going to see how I do just on the prednisone, and getting back to work, getting back, like now I can actually, like I finally started exercising again, because I actually have, like, I'm not like passed out on the couch or crawling or walking with a cane. So I'm starting to take a little bit better care of myself too, which I think will probably do more good. And there's a longer conversation of, do my reactions preclude me from being eligible for a transplant? That would suck. Because I don't think I'm going to avoid a transplant. Like, I'm trying to be positive and be like, I'm going to turn this around and just eat low sodium and blah, 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 but I don't know. So anyhow, especially like if you have had issues with IMURAN and that's how you found this, please comment on the video just so that there's some source, more people talking about these issues, so we can help each other. So yeah, thanks for listening.